Hello, welcome to another video. Welcome to this video, the first ever episode of my new TBR game, Take a Hike. I am so excited about this game. I can't even tell you. I had the idea for it basically fully formed, and even though I had already started playing a new round of Jokes on Me, which is my bestie Bailey's TBR game, I basically was like, okay, I'm scrapping that. We're moving over. We're doing Take a Hike instead. This game is heavily inspired, like very much. It's almost exactly the same as TBR Star Hop from Stephanie at Stephanie's Bookverse. So I'm going to link her channel down below, and I'll link the playlist of her TBR game because it's a favorite of mine. And, you know, it's a month-long TBR game. And it's just so much fun to watch. But she also has a mini version, mini TBR Star Hop, which she uses as a sort of readathon, usually for like a 48-hour readathon, where she's just using a smaller version of the board to have fewer books because of the smaller time frame. And I just thought that that would actually work really well as a game that works similarly to Jokes, where for one video you pick, you know, you play the game and you end up with between 2 and 6 books to read for that video. And there's some choice, but not too much choice, and it's fun. And has just like a small element of structure to it that can give shape to reading vlogs, while also, you know, using it as a way to read specifically the books that you own, which was the intent of Jokes on Me, and which is what I am going to be doing with Take a Hike. Because I recently updated my my spreadsheets and my Goodreads, and I have 42 unread books that I own. So that's books that are on my bookshelf and books that I have as an e-arc. So I have the book, but I haven't read it yet. In addition to TBR Star Hop, there is another game made by a creator named Sarah, and her game is like the bakery TBR game. Instead of universe themed, it's bakery themed, and mine is woods themed, basically. So let's get into how it works so that I can start playing. The way that the game works is that I will start with my piece on the trail marker, and then I'll roll a single 6-sided die to tell me how many spaces to move along the trail, and then I keep rolling until I reach the end of the trail, which is the lookout with the binoculars. And for the leaf, flower, and log spaces, I have these TBR jars. They don't have a ton of prompts in them, but they have some. And like the leaf prompts are slightly easier, the flower prompts are slightly harder, and then the log prompts, because like I have to climb over the log, I don't really get a choice in those. They're mostly like random, something else picks my, you know, my book kind of. And then if I land on a snail, my next roll I move backwards. And before I do that roll, I have to decide to either read a 30 by 30 book for the snail, or read nothing for the snail and then read 2 books for whatever the prompt is for my next roll. So I'm moving backwards regardless, but before I move backwards, I need to decide if I'm going to read a 30 by 30 book or just double up my next prompt. So the snails are kind of, they slow me down because I have to go backwards, and I didn't want to send myself all the way back to the beginning, which is what the wormholes do in TBR Star Hop, but I did want to have add some tension there. So yeah, the snails slow me down. So that's the game, that's how it works. I'll link all the other creators that I mentioned down below, of course. And now let's get into some gameplay, shall we? Wait, one more thing before we get into the gameplay. I want to state something that, like I said, this is a game where I'm dedicated to reading down my own TBR, but the same rule applies for me as when I was playing Jokes, which is that I can have 1 library book per episode. So, you know, just because sometimes I have to read stuff that comes from the library, it's just how it is. So some of the prompts, like, I might not be able to fulfill with a book that I own. Hopefully I should, but anyway, yeah, I get 1 library book, okay? Now let's get to the rolls. Okay, the first prompt, recent edition. This was a little bit scary for me when I first pulled it out because I did recently buy a couple of books. They were not small books necessarily, and I want to keep things moving here. So I was a little bit nervous that I was going to have to dive into kind of a larger book right away. But actually I looked at my most recent ARC that I got, and it's called Don't Sleep with the Dead by Nevo. I have no idea what it's about. It comes out in April, and that's the book I'm going to be reading for recent edition. Okay. Freebie. This is like just means a free space. Like I don't have to read a book for this space. It's like just carry on. So that was really nice for the log pick, to be honest. So that could have gone badly. Leaf pick, a book club book. This is one of those, what I was saying is that sometimes you need a library book because I do have a couple of book clubs that I participate in. I am really trying to pare it down, but I like them. So what can I do? But for this book club book, I'm going to be choosing Desert Creatures by Kay Chronister, which is the pick for January. Shelf This, which is my friend Bailey's book club. And I think probably by the time this video hits the web, we'll have had the discussion for that book already, so I'll be able to link it below for you. This is like a sci-fi dystopian like desert book. That's kind of the vibe. So we'll talk more about that later. Okay, the final spot on the board is The Binoculars, which are a My Choice book. So for my choice for this episode, it's gonna be Fool's Errand, which is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy, which is the third series in the larger realm of the Elderlings. You may notice that I'm already quite far into this book. I am also quite far into Desert Creatures. So I had a goal this year to make sure that every book I read this year gets into a video in some way. So I have a couple of ideas for ways to just like get the books that I'm just reading for nothing into a video. But then when I started this game, I was like, oh, I can just, the books that I'm already reading, I'll just put them into my first episode. And so I did that. So those are the books. And let's get to reading, I guess. I'm so excited. All right, I have started Don't Sleep with the Dead by Nevo, and boy have I had a shock. I requested that book because I had just read and loved a book called The City in Glass. It's really hard for me to remember the name of that one. I don't know, it just doesn't roll off the tongue. But I also have really loved the Singing Hills Cycle books by the same author. So I thought, perfect, another short, sweet little fantasy novella. I can't wait to dive into this. And so I requested it. I was approved. I was delighted to be approved. And that's not really what it is. I didn't read a synopsis. Okay, that is obvious based on what I'm gonna say in a little bit, but I just cracked it open. I dove in. I was excited. I was a little confused. I was like, you know, a lot of this doesn't make sense, but it'll make sense eventually. Like I'm down for it. I'm along for the ride. It's, you know, it's gonna be an experience. And then I was like, I wonder, like, what is this about? I reached a point in my reading where I was like, maybe I should read the synopsis. And when I did, I discovered that this is a companion novel to The Chosen and the Beautiful or something. The the Great Gatsby retelling that Nevo wrote, which I didn't read because I didn't like the Great Gatsby. I have no desire to revisit it, sorry. And I am anyway, I guess. Not reading, I think it's The Chosen and the Beautiful, but reading this companion novella. What I know about the retelling is that it was a queer and fantastical sort of thing, and that's already come up a little bit in this book, about like people changing faces. And I think my main character in this book is made of paper. I don't know how to talk about what the book's about so far without, like, I don't want to spoil something from The Chosen and the Beautiful. And also it's just such a short book, but it does have Nevo's prose, which I love, and the way that the fantasy elements are revealed is, I like it. It's good for me. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna be finishing this, but I am just surprised to find that it is a companion novel to a book that I haven't read. So yeah, I'll be back probably in a couple days when I finish it. I just finished Don't Sleep with the Dead, and I have to say I am shocked. I'm giving it like I'm giving it 3 stars. I don't want to be somebody who immediately tells you how many stars I gave a book, and I don't really know why. And this is just like a part of this thing that I'm constantly like, I wish, or maybe I should stop rating books. It's so not related to this, and it's also not something we're gonna do. So never mind. But I did rate it 3 stars. I liked it, fine. I didn't love it. I don't want to read The Chosen and the Beautiful. I thought I was getting into something totally different than what I was actually getting into, and that kind of like changed how I enjoyed the book. It definitely like is a standalone, but if you've read The Great Gatsby, which I have, you kind of know a little bit about who's who, at least in this book. And I don't know what alterations to The Great Gatsby were made for The Chosen and the Beautiful. I can guess based on some things that happened in this little shorty, but yeah, I don't know. It's just still extremely closely linked to a book that I don't really care about. I didn't supremely enjoy. I thought it was just fine, and so I was interested in how this book might change my mind about that, but it really didn't. There were some things in this book that were so reminiscent of The City in Glass. Like, I kind of was like, oh, when you wrote The City in Glass, that sort of inspired you to like add some of that into this other book that you wrote, The Chosen and the Beautiful, and sort of just turn that into a new book, because there was just a few things that felt very directly pulled from that, particularly the very ending of this book. I won't say what happens at the very end, but it was just something that I was like, that's something that would have 100% happened in The City in Glass. So it was wonderful fantasy, in like a wonderful to me. I mean, it's certainly not everyone's taste in fantasy, but it was just so not a ton of plot, as you can imagine in something so short. But yeah, I liked it. Okay, I liked it, and I finished it. All right, let's be clear. I started recording this before I started the car moving, okay? Okay. We're gonna see how bad the video quality or like the audio quality is from this. Hopefully it'll be fine, but if it's not fine, obviously I will refilm the video. But I'm heading home. I just have quite a packed day today, and I'm heading home. I have a lot going on today, and tonight is the live show for Desert Creatures, so I wanted to talk about that. Because I want to say some of my thoughts like before the live show, and we'll all talk about it, because I just want to go on record with my own actual interpretation before I'm influenced by my friends. So I did finish Desert Creatures. I like to come on and do an update in the middle of a book, if not many updates, but I like doing it because it forces me to get my thoughts in order and to think about the book and to consider it, you know, instead of just like absorbing it, no thoughts. So that's why I like to do it. But in this case, there were just simply no thoughts. I felt really confused about the whole book the whole time. It is a book that I don't know that I would have finished had I not been reading it for a book club, but I did not hate it. I don't know how to rate it, I don't know how I feel, but I finished it. Desert Creatures is a post-apocalyptic novel about a girl named Magdala and her journey, her life. I don't know. Hello? I still don't really feel like I know what to say about the plot of this book because there kind of wasn't one, but I also don't feel like I learned too much about the characters. Like, there's not a character with a huge arc that I could tell you about. I don't really think. I think the desert was a character in this book, and that's kind of interesting. It had something of Parable of the Sower in the, like, the apocalypse bit and the religion being a factor bit. It was also had something, of Annihilation in the, like, mutations and semi-magical situations with creatures. And what else? It also, like, I don't know, I have two main gripes that I'm going to say right now. The first thing is, because the plot, I don't need a plot, but I just didn't, there was nothing for me to really, like, hold on to in this story, and that's what I wanted. So if it's not going to be the plot, it needs to be the characters, but it wasn't the characters either, really. So when there's a post-apocalyptic story, it's like this assumption that when all systems fail, people will inherently turn against each other, but I really think the opposite is true. I just don't think that their first instinct is going to be control, violence. Like, it's just so not what I think would really be happening. And also, my other gripe is just that in this instance, it really seems like there's like a sorry, where was I? My second gripe is just that, like, a post-apocalyptic world that still references our current world. Like, they're talking about the names of the deserts, the Sonora and the Mojave, Las Vegas. Like, those are names of places that exist in the world. So to me, this is the world has ended. The world as we know it has ended. I just don't think that when the world ends, people will still live in the desert. I just don't think they will. It's really hard to live in the desert because there's no water and there's no food. So that's my other gripe, is just that, like, if you're gonna have these desert civilizations in your post-apocalyptic world, I would like some reason for that. I guess a lot of them are pilgrims heading to the Church of Las Vegas, but, like, what? Like, Las Vegas is barely surviving right now? No offense. So why? Yeah, I don't know. This was just, like, desert fiction, I guess, and that's part of it, but I was too hung up on, like, the realities of this science fiction world, so that's on me. But yeah, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. The only way that I can, like, recommend it to people is to say what it's like, which is The Parable of the Sower and Annihilation. To me, together, those are really it. Oh, the other thing that was kind of nagging at me is that I don't know that this book was saying anything. If it was saying something, I'm very sorry, I didn't hear it. And that's certainly possible. It's unlikely that this book was not saying anything. Because that's sort of what books are about. Like, when you're doing, post-apocalyptic, a destructive society, like, there's usually a reason for that. There's usually, like, something that you're getting at. You, the author. Or me, the reader, would be pulling from it. Like, there was a lot of critiques in Parable of the Sower of, like, really specific sort of paradigms, but I didn't really get those in this. It wasn't doing, like, a lot of the stuff that Those Beyond the Wall and The Space Between Worlds, that duology, that had also, parts of that have a very similar setting and, like, tone to some of this, but that was an angry book, both of those, I guess, but it was at least saying something. I don't know what this book was saying. So that's Desert Creatures, my book club book. Thanks for listening. Sorry about the sound quality if I decide to put this in the video, because I didn't find another time to get my thoughts out. All right, I have now had the discussion about Desert Creatures with my friends, and it did make me think a little bit about, well, first of all, when I was like, why would people live in the desert? in the apocalypse. It's inhospitable. Apparently there was mention in the book that I just missed, that said that something happened and all of the rain is toxic, so people need to be living where there isn't rain. So that's one of my issues sort of addressed. But overall, I feel like the rest of what I said kind of still stands, and I have also since learned that there was a lot more religious references than I personally picked up on. And even for my friends who did pick up on it, it didn't necessarily help, or it didn't really strongly change the way that they felt about the book. So overall, not really a fan favorite, but it's over. I'm parked in my car outside the library, and it's snowing so much, like I can barely see out my windshield now because of how much snow has come down since I parked here. And I didn't see this snow coming like at all when I left my house. It was like partly cloudy, you know, but no snow. It had snowed overnight, you know, and so I get in my car to come here, and about 2 minutes after I leave my house, like, it became dark and my visibility dropped to like 20 to 30 feet. It was scary. I was going very slow because I couldn't see anything, and it's still like that out 30 minutes later. Here I am, and it's still like that. So hopefully they've plowed by the time I have to go home. Anyway, The Fool's Errand. Okay, I want to talk about Fool's Errand, and mostly when people talk about this book, because it is the first book in a trilogy, but that trilogy is the third trilogy within a greater like connected series, which is The Realm of the Elderlings. I often hear people just like not say anything about it, like not talk about plot or like what type of story it is or what they like or don't like about it, like at all, because to say anything about this book, you're going to be spoiling things about the earlier books. And so for that reason, if you have not read the first 6 books of The Realm of the Elderlings, the Farseer trilogy or the Rainwilds trilogy, mostly the Farseer trilogy, and you don't want to be spoiled for anything in the further books in the series, I'm just going to put a little spoilers banner around the frame, and you can just go ahead and skip until when that goes away, because I would like to dish. So presumably now we are it's just me and you, somebody who has read the Farseer trilogy at least, or who doesn't plan to and so doesn't care and just wants to hear me yap. So let's get to yapping. I love this book. I'm so excited to be reading it. I have been reading through this entire series with a slowly dwindling group of friends, but I'm having the time of my life. I think Robin Hobb is just like a top author of all time for me, and each book just hits so good. So this book picks up with Fitz about 15 years after the Farseer trilogy. So Fitz is like 35, but he really went through it in that series, so he's a little bit of, his body is not holding up great. He's got a lot of aches and pains for someone his age. He's there, he's with Night Eyes, so we got to be back with the two of them, and I love their bond still so much. I was so happy to be with them, and then the Fool shows up, and I'm even happier because now it's like the gang's all back together and they're gonna go on an errand. It's so exciting. I love them. I love them. I love them. I love them. So Fitz and the Fool, under his new disguise as Lord Golden and Night Eyes, and some other people, go on an errand to fetch Prince Dutiful, who is the king in waiting, basically. Is that true? He's the prince, I guess, is what he is. And he is the son of Queen Ketrican and Verity. And so he's like the rightful ruler, but he's young still. And he's missing. He ran off with his pet cat, who to me, I'm very suspicious of the cat. I really want to like the cat, but I just don't believe that the cat is not going to be like a menacing character. So I'm a little bit nervous about what could happen with that. And I'm also just nervous about Night Eyes because he's getting up there in dog years, you know, and I don't know that I'll be okay if anything happens to him. That's kind of where we're at. I'm not going to say too much about it because the plot in this one sort of slowly ramped up. Like, it was like, we just have to run this quick errand, and then it becomes like more and more and more complex. as we carry on. So I'm loving the book. I can't wait to finish it. I'm scared to finish it, but I'm excited to continue with this series, and I love this little crew so much. So much. Hello? I finished it. I finished Fool's Errand. It's just slightly too far away, by Robin Hobb, and I am unwell. But 5 stars, 6 stars maybe. I don't know what she does. I don't know what's going on, but just truly some of the best like written books I've like ever read. I don't know what else to say. There were so many, no spoilers here whatsoever, but the way that Robin Hobb continues to write, first of all, animals and human-animal relationships I find refreshing and excellent. I think often in fantasy there are cases of like just casual neglect or cruelty towards animals, just as in a medieval inspired way, you know how some fantasy is. But Robin writes characters who don't ignore that, which I just really like, because it always sticks out to me when I'm reading a different sort of book where, you know, animals are being treated too harshly or they're having to carry too heavy of burden, and Robin never just like lets that slide. So I love that. And just some of the relationships and some of the parallels in characters in this book was just so well done. Some of the most heartbreaking scenes I've read in memory, but written with such perfect, painful clarity. I just really think these books are phenomenal. So happy to have finished that, my choice book. And on that note, I don't know really what to do with the rest of my day. I probably should have waited until evening to finish that book, but I couldn't help myself. And that brings us to the end of our first hike. Thanks for joining me on this hike. I want to just share a few numbers before we head off. A great book, a not great book, and a fine book. We read for this, which is pretty good start, I think. The only thing is that, so Fool's Errand is a book that I do own, but the Realm of the Elderlings series, I own the entire thing, and it's not on my owned TBR shelf. Like, I just add one book at a time, I think. Like, I'll add the next one now, but I own the whole series. So as I'm reading that, my owned TBR is not changing in that respect. I guess it would be reasonable for me to put the entire rest of the series onto my own TBR shelf so that the number would go down. But I just don't want to clog my Goodreads like that, so I'm not doing it. And so we're kind of going to disregard the Realm of the Elderlings books. Are books that I own, and I'm going to be reading them throughout this year and some of next year probably, but definitely. But they're not going to make the number go down. The number, which at the beginning of this episode was 42, and which now, after having read Don't Sleep with the Dead, is 41. So in the time of filming this episode, I did not buy any books. That's pretty much all I can say. Overall rating, I don't know, but it's not great. And then some further numbers. So I'll just say that I read for this episode between January 9th, which is when I started Desert Creatures, and February 10th, which is the day that I finished Don't Sleep with the Dead. So if that's confusing to you about how it took me so long to read 2 really short books and 1 kind of long book, I don't know what to tell you, but that is what happened. In the time since I started the first book for this video and now, I started 10 other books also. But I DNF'd 5 of them. So I am currently reading more than 5 books, because some of them I had started before I started Desert Creatures, actually, which was the first book that I started for this video. I was really wanting to fit the books that I was already going to be reading into this episode and into the next episode a little bit also. You'll see that. So I'm going to get that one out to you as soon as I can. I'm already reading. I'm already excited. But I'm just happy to have started this new adventure. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my game. Let me know if you have any suggestions. If you have any more prompts you want me to throw into my jars. Or, you know, if you had any other thoughts that you wanted to share, I'm happy to hear them. Okay, thank you so much. Good night.